In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to create a basic animation inside After Effects. We'll take a look at the files that we're going to be working with just real quickly. We have a JPEG file that's a picture from Altoon Ha, which is a set of Mayan ruins down in Belize. And then we have a fairly absurd #1 in the world icon. We're not sure what they're #1 in the world with yet, but that's what we've got. This is an Adobe Illustrator file. I will say that it is a multi-layered document, which is going to come into play when we start to work with things a little bit more. But those are the files that we're going to be working with. I'm going to jump down to After Effects, and we're going to go ahead and jump into our project. So when Adobe After Effects opens, the first thing that you'll usually see is the welcome screen, and we can see it here. We've got some of the recent projects that we've been working with. We've got the chance to open another project. We can create a new composition, which is what we're actually going to do now. There's a tip of the day, and these cycle through a variety of tips, and you can read all of them if you want to. What I will say is that the more you work with Adobe After Effects, the more sense these tips will make. So right now some of these tips might not make that much sense to you, but just hang in there. I keep the welcome screen open so that I can jump back to some of these recent projects or things if I want to. But if you don't want it open on your computer every time that you start After Effects, you can deselect the little checkbox here, and then the next time you open up After Effects, you'll just go straight to the interface. I'm going to create a new composition just by clicking on this button here. And one thing to keep in mind is that in all of these programs, there's always going to be more than one way. There's always going to be more than one way to do the same thing. So we can create a new composition from the welcome screen. We can also create it by clicking on this little button down here in the bottom of the project tab. We can go to Composition and New Composition and Command or Control N inside the Apple or the PC world is the keyboard shortcut for creating that new composition. We're going to switch from a custom preset that we have here to, let's just go to NTSC D1, which is kind of the standard for standard definition television. The duration here is at 3 seconds, and that's what I want to work with. But just to give you a couple of other ways to set this if you want to. If we want something to be a certain amount of time, we have to tell After Effects exactly how long we want it to be in the format that we've got here. And so these last two zeros are referring to the frame. And so there are 29.97 frames per second. So that's about 30 frames per second. So if I wanted something to be 3.5 seconds, I would do 3, and then I would do 15 here, and that would give me 3.5 seconds. If I want to be a little bit less specific with my typing, and I want something to be 3 seconds long, I can type 300, and After Effects will recognize this as 3 and in terms of the seconds, and then 00 in terms of the frames. And so then if I click over here, you can see that we're back to 3 seconds for our duration. I can also type in 3 and period, and if I click over here to activate it, After Effects recognizes that as 3 seconds, and then the period is substituting for the 2 zeros for our frames here. So we'll talk more about this as we go, but just want you to get more comfortable with it as we work. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Oh, and I forgot to name the composition. So we want to make sure to do that from the beginning because we want to make sure that we've got sort of good file organization. We're going to call this Travel Promo. Click OK. And so the travel promo pops up in my project tab. It also opens up in the timeline, and we can see it over here in my composition window. I'm going to go ahead and save my file now so that if anything happens, it's not lost. We're going to call the new folder Working Files, and it's usually a good idea to keep your working files separate from the files that are actually your media, and we'll call this O2 Promo. All right. Now what I want to do is import the files that I'm going to be working with in this particular composition. So we're going to import multiple files. And so the first file that I want to import is my JPEG. And I'm just going to import that as a JPEG. We'll click Open. And then it pops up over here. And because I selected import multiple files, now the window pops up again so that I can select another file for importing. So I want to import this #1 Illustrator file, but I want to use it as a composition and retain the layer sizes. So if I click Open, then it's going to ask if I want to import another file, and I don't, so I'm just going to hit Cancel. But over here in my project, we've got our JPEG file for my Altoon Ha, and then I've got my composition that's been created from my Illustrator file. I'm going to go ahead and drop this down into my composition, and you can see that it's a larger file than my composition size, and if I scroll out you can see the bounding box for the file. There's a couple of different ways that I can resize this so that it works with my composition. If I click and drag, and if I hold down the Shift key, I can resize it so that it maintains the proper proportions. And if I use my scroll button on my mouse to zoom in, we can see what it looks like. If I undo that so that we can see another way to do things, if I go up to Layer and Transform and Fit to Comp, then you can see that it sizes the file to fit the composition exactly. Now, one of the things that it does, if we come down and we look at our transform properties, underneath my scale, you can see that the XY coordinates for my scale are different. And what that means is that After Effects is actually distorting the file to fit it into the composition. And so if I undo that, we come back, and if we come up to Layer and Transform, and now we've got some options: Fit to Comp Width and Fit to Comp Height. So if we go to Fit to Comp Height, you can see that we have some little black slides along the exterior of the image. And so if we zoom in, we can see that the height of the composition didn't give us enough width from the picture. So if we undo that and we come back to Layer and Transform and Fit to Comp Width, you can see that the width of the picture fits exactly, and then we've got a little bit of extra space, and we'll come and zoom in up here. We've got a little bit of extra space on the exterior of the top, and again, just using the space bar to switch to the hand tool, and on the bottom. If I want to fit it into the window, we can come down to this bottom corner with our magnification ratio, and we can do Fit, and then we can see what's there. So sometimes it takes a couple tries to figure out what's the best fit for you, but just wanted to show you a couple different ways to do things. Okay, so we've got that set into place, and if I like the position, what I'm going to do is just lock it off so that I don't accidentally make any changes to that particular layer.